So this was the initial article that they wrote.
Jose Moreno was 28.
He was shot November 7th, 1990.
Moreno was instantly paralyzed from the waist down.
There's nothing about that day that I don't forget. The smells, the tubes, the doctors, the nurses.
His sister Vanessa Morales and daughter Christina Moreno helped care for him till he passed away suddenly in February of 2020.
I'm still pretty angry. My dad was only 57 years old.
Moreno was recorded as a homicide. The cause of death, complications of paraplegia due to remote gunshot wound. But the family found out Wednesday that may not be true.
You're supposed to give people closure and give people answers, and you just went halfway to do it?
The Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office audited the work of Deputy Medical Examiner Dr. Marc Krouse after the body of Alfredo Oliveras had to be exhumed for a new autopsy because Krouse missed a bullet, which his attorney disputes. The audit looked at 41 homicide cases Krouse worked on in 2020 and found omissions, lapses, and failures to obtain all necessary records in 27 of the 41 cases.
I was stunned to hear that there were this many mistakes. When I heard this number of mistakes.
Christy Jack is a defense attorney, but worked as a Tarrant County prosecutor for nearly 25 years.
I can certainly empathize with what a headache this situation is and will continue to be for what I would estimate years to come.
Krouse has been at the medical examiner's office for 40 years, and Jack believes hundreds of cases could be impacted.
The ramifications cannot be overstated.
The audit says Moreno's case was one of the most egregious errors. It says Krouse failed to review records from Moreno's primary care physician, failed to review hospital records or the police report, and took one x-ray that didn't show the bullet.
How do you consciously just not do that?
Because of what's listed as a lack of due diligence, the report says Moreno's cause of death is not supported by source documents examined.
Just want to know where his head was at the time. Why are you not giving us closure?
The family never got a call. They found out from news stories online. Krouse has been suspended and will be terminated with his last day April 24th. Krause's attorney says there's been a rush to judgment and he's investigating the medical examiner's office, chief medical examiner Dr. Nizam Pirwani, who performed the audit, and the commissioner's court.
I'm concerned that the audit itself had a lot of mistakes in it. And so it's like, who's going to audit the audit?
The Dallas County District Attorney's Office was appointed to conduct an independent investigation of Krause's work.
Somebody needs to be held accountable.
After tragedy, we try to understand and heal.
I want to know what happened to him.
Moreno's family is starting that process again, and no one knows if other families may have to do the same.
What is the medical examiner's office going to do to put these fail-safes in check where this doesn't happen anymore? At all?
In Fort Worth, I'm William Joy.